This lecture will focus on homeostatic imbalances of red blood cells, and then we will discuss the leukocytes and their functions. A decrease in the oxygen carrying ability of the blood, for whatever reason, is anemia. Anemia may be the result of a lower than normal number of red blood cells or abnormal or deficient hemoglobin content within the red blood cells. Several types of anemia are classified and described briefly on the table in an upcoming slide. But one type, sickle cell anemia, deserves a little more attention because people with this genetic disorder are frequently seen in hospital emergency rooms and also do not live very long. Now, in sickle cell anemia, the abnormal hemoglobin formed becomes spiky and sharp when the red blood cells unload oxygen molecules or when the oxygen content of the blood is lower than normal. The stiff, deformed erythrocytes rupture easily and dam up in small blood vessels. These events interfere with oxygen delivery and cause very extreme pain. It is amazing that this havoc results from a change in just one of the amino acids that code for the hemoglobin molecule. Just one, folks. That's all it takes. Now, this table shows you the different types of anemias that can form in the human body. Let's talk a little bit about leukocytes. Now, although leukocytes, or the white blood cells, are far less numerous than red blood cells, they are crucial to body defense against disease. On average, they account for less than 1% of the total blood volume. Now, white blood cells are the only complete cells in the body. That is, they contain nuclei and the usual organelles that cells normally have. Leukocytes can defend the body against damage by bacteria, viruses, and parasites, and tumor cells. Now, some of these leukocytes have some special characteristics. They can slip in and out of the blood vessels in a process called diapedesis. They can also locate areas of tissue damage and infection in the body by responding to certain chemicals that diffuse from the damaged cells. Whenever white blood cells mobilize for action, the body speeds up their production, and as many as twice the normal number of white blood cells may appear in the blood within a few hours. Leukocytosis generally indicates that a bacterial or viral infection is stewing in the body, and the opposite condition, leukopenia, is caused by certain drugs such as corticosteroids and anti-cancer agents. In leukemia, the bone marrow becomes cancerous and huge numbers of white blood cells are turned out very rapidly. Now, white blood cells are classified into two major groups, the granulocytes and the agranulocytes, depending on whether or not they contain granules in their cytoplasm. This phrase, never let monkeys eat bananas, can help you be able to remember the most abundant to the least abundant of the white blood cells. Now, all blood cells differentiate from hemocytoblast stem cells in the red bone marrow. The population of stem cells renews itself by mitosis, and some of these daughter cells become lymphoid stem cells, and some become myeloid stem cells. The lymphoid stem cells develop into two classes of lymphocytes that function in the immune response, and everything else forms from the myeloid stem cells. The granulocytes are granule-containing white blood cells. The neutrophils are the most numerous of the white blood cells. They are avid phagocytes at sites of acute infection and are particularly partial to bacterial and fungi. Think of them like the Pac-Man. They love to gobble up any kind of bacterial and fungi. Eosinophils numbers increase rapidly during allergies and infections by parasitic worms ingested in food or entering via the skin. Basophils are the rarest of the white blood cells. They contain histamine, which is an inflammatory chemical that makes blood vessels leaky and attracts other white blood cells to the inflammatory site. The second group of white blood cells is the agranulocytes, which contain no visible cytoplasmic granules. Lymphocytes tend to take up resident and lymphatic tissues, where they play an important role in the immune response. Monocytes are the largest of the white blood cells. When they migrate into the tissues, they change into macrophages with huge appetites. Macrophages are very important in fighting chronic infections such as tuberculosis. Platelets are not cells in the strict sense. They are fragments of bizarre multinucleated cells called megakaryocytic, which pinch off thousands of inoculated platelet pieces that quickly seal themselves off from the surrounding fluids. Now, platelets are needed for the clotting process that occurs in plasma when blood vessels are ruptured or broken. Now, what are the key points that we need to remember in this lecture? What is the decrease in oxygen carrying ability of blood called? What is sickle cell anemia? What are the abnormal amounts of leukocytes called? What are the two types of leukocytes? How can we remember the most abundant to the least abundant of the white blood cells? What is the function of each of the white blood cells? And how do each of the blood cells develop? That'll do it for this particular lecture, and we'll move on to lecture number 3.